This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Hello, world, and welcome to episode 235 of a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda, and today's sponsor is A2 Hosting. I've been using A2 Hosting solid-state hosting solutions for our website at geekleader.com for many years now, and absolutely love their support, their service, and all the features that you get. You get access to cPanel. You get all of the things that you can imagine for a great WordPress experience, including their A2 optimized WordPress, which does extra security checks, extra lockdown. You can lock down your editor file so you can't edit anything inside there. You get alerts whenever there are file changes that are done. You can also do automatic updates, backups, and more with A2 Hosting. So highly recommend it. Go to geekleader.com/A2 to get more information and to sign up for their solid-state, turbocharged speed hosting today. Again, that's at geekleader.com/A2. All right, Geek Leaders. Today on the show, I have Greg Edwards, and he is a technology entrepreneur, and he is the founder of CryptoStopper. So we're going to be talking about the importance of backups. We're talking about ransomware, talking about all things cybersecurity, as well as leadership when it comes to entrepreneurship when it comes to tech startups and things like that. Anyway, Greg, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, John. I'm excited to be here.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about how you got to where you are today and what is it that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so I won't go back to the very beginning, but the first company I started was in 98. I still own that business. It's a managed services business, and have started two other SaaS businesses out of that MSP. So the most recent, prior to CryptoStopper, was a company called Axis Backup. It was offsite backup and disaster recovery and cloud recovery before cloud was the cloud. I ended up selling that in 2016 to J2 Global, which is a $3 billion publicly traded company. So that was an interesting exit and fun for me. And then started CryptoStopper really out of a need, both from the MSP side and then also seeing it day to day in the offsite backup business, the rise of ransomware and the need to really have a last line of defense so that other than backup, because backup's absolutely critical, but before you have to go to that step, why not put something in place that's going to do file integrity monitoring and say, hey, a ransomware attack is running, let's kill it now and kill it quickly. And so that's how CryptoStopper was started, was out of the necessity of nothing out there on the market that was stopping ransomware, and really the only way was to recover from backup. And I had tons of experience dealing with that for companies and knew how devastating it was for them. So that's the short version.
So I've been on the other side of the ransomware. And by the other side, I guess I mean the victim side.
I was going to say which of those side.
And have gone through that, many years ago when, like you said, backup was our recovery method. Was okay. Well, we're down right now. Luckily, we have a DR site. Let's fail over to our DR site and work on recovery. But a lot of people, whenever they're planning out a DR site, they're getting all the servers and all the infrastructure pieces, email and all that stuff going. But one of the things that's kind of missed when it is the individual desktops and the endpoints that people are using. And when those are down, that's just re-imaging, and that takes a good bit of time. How is it that CryptoStopper can help some of that?
Yeah. So what CryptoStopper does is we use deception technology to deploy bait files throughout a network and then on the individual desktops and laptops also. And then we're utilizing an algorithm that's watching for ransomware actually running. And once it's detected, if it's detected at a desktop level, it'll kill the process running it so that it isolates it there. And then if it's at the server level, then it'll isolate the offending machine or it's rare that it actually runs on a server, but it'll kill the process at the server level too. So it stops it before it spreads throughout the rest of the network. And so you don't have to do that re-imaging of every single machine.
Yeah, which is a pain in the butt to be nice.
Yep.
So you run an MSP right now, and And I guess this product was something that you guys wanted to develop or you wanted to develop and use, and then also kind of sell. Is that kind of the way this started?
Correct. Yeah, yeah. Well, so it really started out as offering full MSSP, so security services, to our managed services clients, and we used the best SIM that was out there, best EDR tools that were available. This was back in 2016. And really, even with those best of breed next generation AV, EDR, and SIM, ransomware could still get through. And so we built CryptoStopper out of that need of nothing else being able to stop it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where like ransomware is just picked up so much. You hear about it almost every day in the news about somebody getting hit, and what do you do? Let's say I've never heard of CryptoStopper and I do get hit. What should I be doing at this point?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you get hit, it's too late.
Yeah.
It's like sign up beforehand, which unfortunately, usually about 50% of our clients come to us after they've been hit. But I mean, really, from a holistic standpoint, CryptoStopper, I don't ever claim that CryptoStopper is the silver bullet for everything, because it's not. I mean, it is designed specifically to stop ransomware. But within your company, you really need to be educating the leadership team on what your needs are as a company for cybersecurity protection, and what that full stack of cybersecurity protection should be, and what does that look like for you. And it's, there are some general things that absolutely should be done, and then depending on the complexity of the business, then where you should be. But really, it's got to be about educating the leadership. And as the geeks that we are, that's sometimes hard to do. You really have to be a salesman to be able to go in front of, either if it's simply CEO, or if there's an entire executive leadership team or board of directors. You got to go put yourself in front of them and explain why this risk exists and why the company has to take it seriously.
Yeah, I think that's one of you mentioned, that where geeks fall short is the ability to sometimes quantify some of that stuff. And, getting hit with ransomware, you can say, oh, well, it's going to cost this much time of my team, to re-image machines, but that's not the big cost. The big cost is everybody else's time that's going to be down as well. How many transactions, how many leads are sales going to miss because all their laptops have to be re-imaged, and how many transactions, how many customers are not going to get their products and things like that.
Right. And how much time. So even when sounds like you guys had a great DR plan, but it's still, I mean, how much time did that take you guys out?
Yeah. So like for us, we were able to fail over email really quickly, and within an hour or so have that email up and running. But then the rest of the systems, it was like, okay, do we want to fail that over right now and have to worry about synchronizing things coming back for every system, or what do we want to do? So we had to make some strategic decisions of what systems we want to fail over, which ones we could just sunset for now, or take offline for now, and restore from their backup, or things like that. We were using Zerto to do our replication, so we had nearly real time in our DR site to flip things over, which was extremely helpful.
And that's awesome, but it was still devastating, right? Or still,
still
like
painful.
a huge pain.
Yeah. And then this is before, moving to Microsoft 365 and putting things in the cloud and having all that stuff. This is, before those days. So it's a little bit easier now, but still you have that pain of, and also notifying users, that was, people would come in the door, and we had someone, from our help desk group standing at the front door saying, don't power up your machine.
Yeah. I mean, I use an example of a hospital that actually is a hospital in Waverly, Iowa, that put actual printed messages on every single desktop that says, do not power up. And that's what happened in so many events, so many ransomware events, where it's just
to take it a step further, if you get hit with ransomware, you might not be able to print up those messages.
true. Right.
You're not going to have a desktop available to print those up.
Right. You know? at least these guys were able to.
Yeah. So like we've actually thought about that right after this attack. We thought about, should we go ahead and print up signs and have them like waiting?
Yeah. I mean, that's really shows the unfortunate state that we're in right now in cybersecurity. That's even something that you would consider having available.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. So I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk more about the leadership and business side of starting something like this and going through this process. Whenever you're building a product like this, you've got to have specialties in software development and also in cybersecurity as well that kind of work together. What is it like to or right now in this day and age hiring people for those skill sets and and managing that?
It is tough, as that's no surprise to anyone. But the thing, and I think the difference in my management style than some others is as this founder and CEO of the company is the level of transparency that we have. So we have weekly all hands call where any questions, it's an ask me anything session, and I'm a complete open book, whether that's financials or where we stand from an investment standpoint, raising capital for growth right now, or anything. And so we schedule it for an hour and completely open. And I think that's really important to have in place. And we have a very flat management structure. I mean, we're only 14 employees at this point, so not a huge need for lots of management layers. But I think in any leadership role, that transparency with your team is critical. No matter if you're managing 2 people or 100 people, I think that transparency is key.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And, I've been managed by bosses that were very transparent with everyone around them and open. And I've also had the other thing where bosses were like, well, that's a need to know and you don't need to know.
Right.
And one of those makes you feel good and one of them doesn't.
Yep. Easy to determine. Well, and in IT and again, being the geeks that we are, we naturally want to hold on to information. Mm-hmm. And we want to covet that and keep it and not share it. And we really need to be sharing it with everyone that's on our team. And that if you start with transparency, then that leads to honesty and integrity and sharing of information. And that to me is critical to being a good leader.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I've seen it in my team as well, when, we'll have an issue that's maybe on our, networking team or something like that. And we'll be talking about the problems, but we do it. And I also have what I call my Monday morning meeting, which is all staff. So we have our help desk, the applications, the security team, the network engineers, the infrastructure server admins. We're all on the same call. And, we were talking about an issue one time with our network team and trying to solve something. And then someone from the help desk team just said, why don't you do, I forgot what the solution was, but it was very simple with, let's just deploy a new device and set this up and go that route, because we didn't think about that. Like in our mind, we never even thought about a new device.
Yeah. Well, and that group think is key too. I mean, because you're going to get such better ideas out of the group than trying to solve it individually.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that I think transparency is one of those things that isn't talked about enough in leadership circles, because we always talk about the different management styles and things like that, but just open and honest communication is extremely important.
Yep.
So what are some challenges that you've seen, or have you seen any challenges with COVID and people, shifting careers and moving around and all this has been going on? It seems like a whirlwind of things going on right now. Plus all the ransomware attacks that are happening. You had the pipeline shutdown recently. You have lots of little things happening in the news all the time. What kind of challenges?
Right. So our biggest challenges really have been more within our sales staff. I think just because of the kind of company that we are, that from a technology standpoint and the development staff that we have, like we've been really lucky to keep that core team. So we're a team of 5 developers out of 14 total in the company, and that and we've had that same team almost from the very beginning. So we've been lucky in that it's a super unique product. We're solving a massive problem and we're all really rowing in the same direction. So we've been very lucky from that standpoint. We need right now to hire a product manager and need to hire some additional staff. So I'll see what those challenges are as we're now going to expand the team. But we've really had more challenges on the sales side. We were a completely remote company pre-COVID, so that helped, and that there wasn't any kind of massive shift there. We'd already made that shift pre-COVID, but now hiring the sales staff and I think with the technical and development teams being remote, like we're kind of introverts anyway, so being remote makes that easier. Whereas a sales team, they need that camaraderie and need to be and see each other, and so it's been harder there. So I don't know if that helps your group at all, but I think the key for us on the technology side and why we've been successful is because it is something that's exciting, and building that excitement within the team and a goal of solving something hard, like that challenge is as important as the other items that we've talked about with the transparency and honesty. But having that goal and working towards something, I think, is really what's kept the core group that we have.
Yeah, I think struggle and creating something that's challenging, that means something, that's important, is one of the things that you guys have going for you, when it comes to building something that's going to detect ransomware.
Right.
And you got new ransomware varieties coming out all the time, and you're constantly
there's no lack of challenge in what we're doing.
Yeah, but I think having a good challenge, like you said, is I think back even as a kid, playing sports. What was the thing that was most enjoying when playing sports was the challenge of the game, and victory and winning, and solving problems. I think the same thing holds true when it comes to your career. If you have an easy job where you're going to get bored and you're not going to be excited about it, and it's not going to mean as much to you.
Yep, absolutely.
So when it comes to ransomware and cybersecurity, what are some things that we all need to know, whether we're a developer, an engineer, infrastructure manager, or CIO, CTO? What are some things that we need to pay attention to and be kind of following in the cybersecurity world?
Yeah, so I think if you start at the heart of why we have such a problem with ransomware right now, that's a good place to start. So if you think back, and John, I assume that you've been in the technology industry for several years now.
Oh, yeah.
And remember the days back when malware events were, they were a pain in the butt. And sometimes you even had to reimage a machine to deal with it. But really, it just caused individual user slowness and just individual station issues. Well, now when you think about those bits of malware that are always going to get through, they're almost exclusively ransomware now. So when you think about it in those terms of, okay, yeah, we've always had malware that got through, it just wasn't devastating like it is today. And so now those small number of malware that get through your AV products, and your, depending on how sophisticated your cybersecurity stack is, but the items that get through are going to be devastating. And that's where you've got to start. And then, so how do you protect against that? Definitely having CryptoStopper is a good place to start. And then looking at the rest of your stack. Do you need a SIM? Do you have EDR, XDR? Does it need to be a managed XDR solution? Do you have next gen AV? Do you have the right firewalls in place? Are you, it's just a whole holistic stack of what you need for cybersecurity to now defend against the malware that is going to get through. So I could talk about this for days. So I don't know how deep you want me to go on it, but that's really the heart of what it comes down to be able to protect from ransomware is think in terms of being able to stop every single malware that's ever gotten through. And if we're talking about technologists that have been at this for even 5 years or more, then that's a really hard thing to solve for, is to stop every single piece of malware that ever comes through, because those ones that get through now are ransomware.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that unless you're actively working on these kind of things, you kind of forget about how much is stopped and how much is still out there and how vulnerable maybe your company really is. I know when we first started doing phishing tests, I don't know, 5+ years ago, we it was mind blowing to see how many people click the links, and then even today, after doing, training and, we kind of go to a punishment stage. Like if you click the links, and I have to go through another series of training.
Right.
But even with that, there's still, a percentage of folks that will click almost every time.
Right. Well, and that gets to the point of why, like, the user education is absolutely critical, right? Like I would never say don't do that, because you should be doing that. But even after doing it for years and years, people will still click on things.
Yep.
And you can't ever 100% solve for that. And then if you just looked at your mail delivery, like whatever you're using for mail filtering, look at how many are getting caught and think about, okay, those are getting caught, but what's not getting caught? I mean, I would venture to guess that in any mail filtering system, probably somewhere between 30 and 60% is being filtered out right off the top. Well, how many are still getting through? And then how many of your users have been educated well enough to know not to click on those? And then is your patch management up to date on every single device? I mean, it's really about eliminating risk and getting to the point, we can never get to 100%, but adding these layers of defense make it harder and harder for the attacker to get through, and more likely that you're going to stop the attack.
Yeah. So let me ask you a technical question when it comes to Crypto Stopper. Let's say I've got it installed on my network and on my endpoints or wherever it goes, and it detects something on a machine that's starting to encrypt files. It kills the process, like you said, contains it on that machine. In order to repair that, do I still need to image that one machine, or what's the
depending on the situation. So we'll report out, so it not only kills it, but then it sends an admin report to show what process was running it. Were there any files that were hit? It'll generate a log of any files that get hit, and so then you have the information as the tech that's going to remediate the problem. You have what you need, because most of the time, what the IT staff will do once they figure out that a ransomware attack is happening, which is generally 2 hours to 2 days into the event, you're pulling network cables and shutting servers down, and you don't know who patient zero is. Yep. So with Crypto Stopper, you've got that information that you need to be able to go remediate and dive right into solving the problem. And that may include re-imaging the machine, but at least you've got it stopped and you've got it isolated, and where you need to deal with the problem.
Yeah, and I can speak a little bit to the importance of that. I know, going back, several years ago when we got hit, it was one of those things where we had to, prove it to the insurance too, and they wanted to know, like, what's your forensics? Did you have data exfiltration? What exactly happened here? And like you said, at the point by the time we knew we were hit, it was just power down everything, you know.
Yeah.
And we weren't thinking
Yeah.
about trying to preserve data or figure out things at the time. We had to go back after the fact, get a cyber forensics group to come in and help us figure that out so that we could get the insurance claim. It was just a big process versus something that's, if you can't isolate it and
Yes.
stop it right
Yes.
there, you can save a whole bunch of effort.
Yeah. And when we have events where we stop it, it's like it used to be when you would quarantine a malware event. Like it's almost completely a non-event. I mean, we isolate it, we report out on what happened, and you go remediate that one issue. And it's not something where it shuts the entire company down and you're scrambling and having to talk to the CEO or the board and explain what happened and talking to insurance. I mean, it
Yeah.
stops it. It's pretty much a non-event.
Yep. It sounds like, that would save so much effort and time and just stress as well.
Yeah, well, you having been through it, you understand that
Mm-hmm.
stress. I've dealt with so prior to starting CryptoStopper, which we really launched in earnest in 2019, I was running a full MSSP and doing remediation of breaches, and I mean, it's devastating to companies, and the emotion that goes along with that is it's stressful.
Yeah, and being the fact that we were super prepared and had all the disaster recovery in place and were able to kind of do that, I could not imagine the stress if you didn't have those things in place.
And depending on the size of the company really not necessarily determines their preparedness level,
Mm-hmm.
but once a company gets below 300 users or so, the likelihood that they actually have a full DR plan that's been more than tabletop tested, the percentages of the ones that don't have it in place become much higher.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where looking back on it now, after going through something like that, you're really grateful that you did those, regular TR tests and that you knew how to do everything and everybody knew what to do, and it wasn't shooting from the hip.
Yeah, and I would say that's the exception to the rule of most companies, and especially when you get below that 300 or so mark.
Yeah, I've heard so many stories of companies that were, 40, 50 employees and they got hit and basically just closed the doors. We're
Right.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, well, and you add to the fact that most ransomware will now also try to delete the backups. So if
Mhm.
there's an attached backup or even cloud-based backups, I mean, they'll attempt to get those credentials and wipe that. So imagine all your data is wiped out and all your backups are wiped out. I mean, what do
You
you
do.
do?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that goes back to just, being thankful that we did have Zerto and we're able to, replicate offsite, but also we had on-site tape backups, and tape backups are kind of, back then it's a little bit older technology, but they were
It-
offline. So
yeah. At least it popped out, right? And it's
yeah,
sitting on a shelf somewhere.
exactly. um, So I was looking through your site, and you guys have some cool tools and some free downloads and some things that people can do to simulate ransomware and test for things. You want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you guys have available on your site?
Yeah, so we built our own safe ransomware, but basically built a ransomware variant that you can run in a controlled environment and simulate that attack. And then we've now actually added that into our portal, so any of our clients can automate and run those simulations on a scheduled task so that you can see what's it actually going to do. I mean, what is ransomware? If ransomware starts running in our environment, what's going to happen? Is there anything in place that's going to trigger and stop an event?
Yeah, I think that's a cool little feature to have, kind of see where you're at and how prepared you are.
Yeah, because people don't think about, I mean, you think that, okay, it's a ransomware variant, right? That it's an executable file that one of my users clicks on and evades our systems, and or maybe it'll get quarantined. Well, that's only about 50% of the ransomware variants that exist today that are actually an executable or some sort of file that's actually running. what's happened is that these attackers have gotten so much more sophisticated and gone to fileless attacks where they're running it via PowerShell or basically any scripting language that is native to Windows. They're running those attacks with that. So those fileless attacks are almost impossible for traditional antivirus to detect and stop.
Yeah, yeah. So, how is it that you got? I know you mentioned bait files before, and are you guys like monitoring those to see if something triggers them or happens to them?
Yep. So we're utilizing that deception technology piece along with native file monitoring so
Mhm.
that we can, number one, speed the accuracy and just speed to detection so that we can stop those attacks much faster. Because we're really what CryptoStopper is damage reduction. So rather than millions of files being encrypted, it's 4 files that are encrypted before we catch it and stop it. And that's critical to what we do, is that damage reduction and how quickly we're able to recognize and stop it. And generally, it's less than a second.
Wow, that's awesome. So, how can people find out more about CryptoStopper, connect with you, and learn more about your product?
Yeah. So our website is getcryptostopper.com. And then people can reach out to me directly, gedwards at getcryptostopper.com.
Awesome. And I'm going to link that up in the show notes at geekleader.com. Greg, thanks for coming on the show and talking about this and educating our users about ransomware and also talking about some of the leadership styles and things that you guys do that are important when it comes to technology teams.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, John.
If you enjoyed that episode, please leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. I'd greatly appreciate that. And also, don't forget to check out merch. We have some t-shirts that I've designed that are on at geekleader.com. You can click on the merchandise section there and check that out. And also, don't forget about the books from our guests. So if you like this guest and other guests that have written books, please go ahead and check that out at geekleader.com. I would greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure they would too.